everybody, welcome back for our first 3-chapter chunk. So this will be a little different than what we've done so far in developmental psychology, in that we're going to cover an entire age period. So we're going to do chapters 4, 5, and 6. So this video, if it goes a little long, I might split into 2. We'll see how it goes, but generally we have learning outcomes for each chapter. So in chapter 4, we're going to talk about the physical development of the infant. Chapter 5 is the cognitive development or the intellectual development of the infant. And then chapter 6 is the socio-emotional development. So we start with physical, and you're going to see this pattern throughout the rest of the chapters in our course. So with developmental psychology, we'll always kind of start with the physical, move into the cognitive, and end with the socio-emotional for each age period that we cover from now on, now that we've actually birthed our human. So we've got our baby is born and they're going to grow. So it's one constant of being a human. We're going to grow. So we grow in a cephalocaudal pattern, so top to bottom. You can see some pictures here that look a little strange, but it's showing that this growth occurs from head down, and then proximodistal, so we grow from the center out. And so it's just two different words that kind of describe the way we grow: top down, center out. The growth of the body is very, very rapid in infancy. So if we grew like this, it would be a real problem. If you, in 3 months, doubled your weight and in a year tripled your weight, this would be incredibly problematic. But for the infant, totally normal. So we've got a range for infants, growth more rapid in infancy than in any other period. We also see a lot going on in the brain with infants. So we have approximately 100 billion neurons at birth. Really active area of research though, so super interesting. What we think right now is that we're born with almost all the neurons that we'll ever have. There is some evidence maybe for some neurogenesis, but it's pretty new. And then really we have this use it or lose it idea. So what the baby sees, does, experiences, those are the neurons that are going to remain. And things that are not in the baby's environment will prune. So they'll lose that. And this will become more important as we keep going on. So the brain, we think, is kind of plastic in that it's flexible and changes with development, changes with exposure to the environment. So infants spend a ton of time sleeping, so 16 to 18 hours a day. So why then are new parents tired? If you've ever been around an infant, you know this, it's because the babies do not sleep in a pattern that one might call typical. We don't often see a baby sleep 16 to 18 hours at night and then stay up all day when you want to be awake and just hang out with you. Typically, we get something like this at 3 in the morning where this baby's just like, hi, let's play. A lot of times they'll have their day and their night switched up, which is, difficult. So they'll think it's time to play at night. Sometimes people who are pregnant will experience this. Their neonate, while it's in the body, still in the womb, will be very active at night and kick and punch while they're trying to sleep. So it takes a while to get the day-night regulation. A really important topic, sudden infant death syndrome. So with this is something that a lot of new parents are very worried about, but there's a lot we can do. We know kind of some of the risk factors there. This is the sudden death of a healthy baby. So we don't know of anything wrong with the baby, seems perfectly average, but then unfortunately they pass away. Typically this is in the 2 to 4 months old range, and there's some risk factors. So we can't control all of these things, but there are some we can control, like not smoking in the baby's environment, not having babies sleep on their stomach. So they have a whole campaign around this called Back to Sleep, and this will show a safe sleeping surface for an infant. So ideally there's nothing in the crib, the baby is on its back, it's got warm clothing, but not too warm. No one is smoking around it. The area around the crib is free of debris, free of any other people. So this is the ideal sleeping environment for a baby according to research. So nutrition and growth. So talking about optimal development or optimal nourishment, breastfeeding is considered optimal, but it is perfectly fine to formula feed as well. So the real thing is fed is best. Sometimes people will say breast is best, and breast is good. It's optimal. It's got great nutrients to it, but bottle feeding really is a safe alternative. And the most important thing is that the baby's fed. That is by far the most important thing. And the World Health Organization, though, does recommend, if able, to breastfeed for 2 years. Really, though, in the U.S., a lot of people do not initiate breastfeeding, and then even when they do, about half of those are going to stop before 6 months. And so for those people who did choose to breastfeed or want to breastfeed, why would they stop? There's a whole lot of reasons why they would stop. It's not so easy. So we have this kind of idea of mom just placing baby at the breast, and the baby's like, oh, great, I can't wait to chest feed. And, then they engage in that process. It's not always that easy. There can be all kinds of issues with the baby's latch and other factors. Also, it can be societal. So there's instances where moms or whoever, is breastfeeding this baby or chest feeding this baby does not feel supported. And this can be a greater societal thing as well as support within their own home and environment. So if you know somebody who does intend on breastfeeding or chest feeding, giving them support is an excellent way to, just being like, hey, I think it's a good thing, buddy. Would you like me to get you a peanut butter sandwich or whatever it is? Just being supportive can make a big difference for these parents, because it is not so easy to do that. But of course, it's perfectly fine to bottle feed as well. So that is a safe alternative, and really fed is best there. The only issue though has been in more developing nations. And so Nestle was one that was really targeted for this practice. They would go in and they would tell moms that their breast milk was not sufficient for the baby, that it wasn't healthy enough, and they would get them then to use powdered formulas. But the problem is in the developing nations that we don't have safe water and don't have the resources to purchase alternative formulas, or baby formulas. And so then some babies were actually starving, unfortunately, and passing away from not having appropriate nutrition. And so in that case, that's really not a safe thing. But fed is best, though. That's the most important lesson from this is, with feeding formula here, where you have safe water and or any place where you really have safe water and have the means to obtain that formula, is going to be a perfectly safe alternative. Malnutrition, though, this is something that's really important. We want to try to prevent. It's most damaging in infancy because we are tripling our body weight, and those effects then can persist. So the idea is to improve the diet as well as the education. So if we can, get healthier foods in there, as well as how to prepare those foods and what foods are needed, the nutrients that are going to be best to support development and growth, then that's ideal. So moving into a little bit more about motor development. So motor development could be a whole class. A lot of these things could be whole classes just on motor development. But it's really, really interesting how we actually learned to walk and move and ambulate. So this one theory is this dynamic systems theory. So it says we learn lots of little skills, and then we actually put those skills together to make movement. So you would have to learn how to balance. So how do I hold my body up? How do I move my limbs? Because it's complicated. How do I perceive the environment and know what's safe to walk or safe to approach and what's not safe to approach? And so you master these skills through differentiation. So we say, like, I'm going to master balance. I'm going to master perceiving my environment. And then we put those all together. So we integrate them. So if you're going to learn to roll from front to back, you have to master some skills. You have to put them together. Then next you want to learn to crawl. So you're going to have to master those skills, the differentiation, learn all those individual skills and put them together. Some of those skills repeat throughout these. We use balance to flip, we use it to crawl, we use it to walk, but we have to integrate it in different ways. So, it's a really, this whole process of gross and fine motor development is quite the process, really, and it unfolds over years. So gross is more of those big bodily movements, so, jumping, skipping, like what I'm doing right now. Fine skills are more, really, they're fine. They're smaller in nature, so like holding a pencil, picking up some, food with a fork, things like that. We have a whole bunch of, losing my words right now, milestones that we want our infants to achieve. And this is average. And so, many babies then will reach them by these averages. I've linked the CDC, as well as this is a fun little YouTube video of a baby who's actually achieving these milestones. But the CDC will tell you kind of where you want your baby to fall. The pediatricians will as well when you go there. But they'll say, on average, we want our babies to be sitting alone by 7 months. Some will do it way earlier, some a little bit later. But if it's much later, then we may want to get some early intervention. And walking alone by 15 months. So, you might have babies who are walking alone at 10 months. You might have babies who need a little bit longer, and that's okay. It's all a big range. It's all an average. But if we're moving too far into the extremes there, then we know maybe we need some early intervention to help that infant. Speaking of helping an infant, newborn reflexes tell us a lot about how our babies are doing immediately right out of the womb. So these are unlearned responses to stimuli. You don't have to teach a baby to have these reflexes, and we think they have some kind of survival value. So the rooting reflex is right here. If you stroke a baby's cheek, they will come over and go, oh, like open their mouth. We lose this reflex. So if I came over and stroked your cheek, you'd probably just be disgusted by this, and not come over and be like, what is that? Is that food? Is there a nipple? We lose that reflex. We lose some of these other reflexes as well, like the stepping reflex. If you hold baby upright, they step. The Morey reflex is fun one. So if you have a baby and you hold them kind of like this, like if their little head was facing me here, and then you go, wee, then they throw out all their arms and legs like, oh my goodness, she's dropping me. So that's kind of a startle reflex. And so you can read through each of these, but some of them will remain, like the gag reflex. If you, brush your teeth, stick your toothbrush too far down, you'll you keep that one, you gag. So some of these we'll keep, some of them we lose. Newborns, they have really, really good sense of smell, taste, and touch. So if you stroke, their little cheeks, they feel that, they can smell really, really well. So these things are breast pads. They're able to soak mom's breast milk into a breast pad and put them on either side of baby, like mom or stranger, and baby can sense mom. They can smell mom's breast milk. So they really do have a good sense of smell. They don't hear as well and they don't see as well. So for our infants, it's really not until about a year is their visual acuity is the same as an adult. They have a real preference for moving human faces, which makes a lot of sense if you want to survive, evolutionarily speaking. So if the person who is moving and talking and active, they're the one who's going to feed you and make sure that you keep on going. So you want to have a preference there to zone in on that human face. Like, hey, take care of me. This one is a really fun video to watch. So the visual cliff, what they do is they put a baby here on this thing. This looks unsafe, this picture. It is not unsafe. This actually has a big sheet of plexiglass there. So baby is perfectly fine to just, scoot their butt all the way over here to this parent, but they don't think they're fine. They think it's scary. And they initially don't really, realize this is scary too much. But the more exposure they get to the environment, the more they're going to realize that this is a drop and that a drop can be dangerous. And so we'll see, kind of their approaches to this drop differ a bit by age, but it's a really fun way to test babies. I think people who study babies are super fascinating, because you can't just ask a baby like, hey baby, what do you think about this drop? And the baby be like, well, actually, I think it's terrifying. Babies don't emote in that way. And so instead they come up with these really interesting experiments to test these babies. I love it. I think it's fascinating. That's actually our physical part though. And so we're not splitting them up by chapters. This is really just one big module. But if you're reading, along with us in the chapters, really that's our physical development part. And we're going to move into more of the chapter 5-ish cognitive part, Piaget. Piaget is someone we're going to come back to over and over and over again. We're going to keep talking about him. And with Piaget, he has certain stages. And as we move through each stage chronologically, we're going to talk about the stages. But this is just on average. So Piaget thought we make sense of the world through schemes. So we'll have these mental categories of schemes, things like dogs, vegetables, what do they include? We're going to assimilate most things into our scheme. So we'll see a new dog and we'll just put that right into our scheme. And we'll see a new dog and we'll, oh, okay, I've never seen that dog, and we'll just assimilate it. Sometimes though, our schemes are going to be outdated. There's going to be something that's going to blow our minds so much that we're like, these schemes are not useful anymore. I need to have a whole new set of understanding. So if you see a hairless dog, you're like, oh my goodness, I cannot just assimilate this in. I need a whole new category for hairless animals. Or if you see a cat, you've never seen a cat before. Cats don't fit easily into that, group that you have, so you have to make a new group. So this is just a little example. Bangings, babies love to bang stuff, just a common scheme. Assimilation, they can bang most things. If I grab my juice here, I can just bang, 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 bang if I want. And it'll be fine. But there are going to be certain things you just can't bang. And so eggs, if you bang an egg, explodes. Baby doesn't like that. And so they have to accommodate. There's a whole new category now of things you can't hit into other things. So these schemes, they go through this process of equilibration, it's another word I can't. Some of these words, I think it's because I'm first generation, right? So I'm the first person in my family to go to college. I read a lot of these words, but they were never, I just didn't hear people say words like this. So I'll come into words that I can read, but I can't pronounce. And it's something I'm going through my whole adult life. I have to Google these words, how do you pronounce? But that's one of them, so there we go. But we'll find that our schemes, though, have to be reorganized. So this will happen and we'll get different stages because we'll come to this point where we're like, I just can't keep assimilating. I've got too much that I'm accommodating, and I just need a whole jump forward to understand life in a different way. So with Piaget, then he said that would happen and we get separate periods then of cognitive development. So we've got ages associated with these periods down at the bottom, approximate. So the first one we'll talk about is the sensory motor, that's birth to 2. And then as we go through the lifespan and we talk more about our older kids up through our adolescence, we'll keep coming back to Piaget. But with sensory motor thinking, this is Piaget's first stage, and it really combines the senses and the motor skills. So that's why we get sensory motor. This is birth to 2, sensory plus motor. What we see this is a lot of active experimentation. So the infant is actually doing experiments in the world to figure out what happens if I do X, Y, Z. So you'll see babies who will throw a spoon and laugh, and they want you to get it for them, and then they throw it again, and then they throw it again, and parents are like, why is this happening? But the baby's experimenting. They're learning a lot about gravity, about you picking up their stuff, about how you react when they throw stuff. Like it's a huge experiment. Piaget also said that around 18 months, babies will get object permanence. And so with this, they realized that objects are permanent. If you take them away from the baby, they want it back. So if I were to go take your cell phone and then keep it for 15 minutes, you'd be like, can I have my phone back? You don't have to see it. You just remember that it belongs to you and you want it back. So Piaget thought it took babies a long time for them to develop this. And that's where we kind of almost think it'd be easy to take candy from a baby. They wouldn't even notice. It's gone. It's out of sight, out of mind. But we really think he kind of short-sighted babies a little bit. Right now I have a 17-month-old in my house, and there's been a long period of time where if you take something from that kid, he remembers and he wants it back. So especially Play-Doh has been our big thing. If you take that kid's Play-Doh, and this has been for 4 months or so, he wants it back, and you can't hide it. He'll remember. So we think he kind of shortchanged babies a little bit, and that's one of our criticism there. So we think he underestimated our infants and our young kids, and he kind of overestimates adolescents. So his last stage starts at 11, and I don't know about most of y'all, but I don't think I peaked cognitively at 11 years old. I've grown beyond that, and I'm sure most of y'all, feel like you were not at your peak at 11 either. So he also didn't really approach things like how does change happen, why are some kids different, and what role does the environment have? So if you have parents that are super involved, parents that are more hands-off, what kind of exposures are you going to get? So one thing with specifically what role does the environment have? A game for object permanence could be peekaboo. So you see me, now you don't. Now you see me, now you don't. And so if parents play that a lot, our kid's going to develop object permanence faster. He didn't really think about any of these things like the environment. Kind of just thought that this happened the same way for all kids all the time. So there's been some more work, though, extending Piaget's work. Some work has suggested that we have a core knowledge, and this is of things as sophisticated as physics, morals, and math. So some of these little videos are really interesting, but what they really suggest, on average, is that babies have some kind of fundamental understanding of right and wrong. They prefer little puppets that do the right thing versus the wrong thing. They are weirded out. They think it's confusing if you push a little toy train off of what looks like off of a platform, and then it just hangs in midair and doesn't fall. This confuses them, what happened here? So we think that they do have some kind of understanding of how the world works. A little bit more about our cognition. So with the attention, just babies will pay attention. This is a rattle. It's a very easy thing to do if you can hang out with a baby. So if you just shake it in their face, they'll see an orienting response. They're like, what is that? And they'll pay attention. But then if you just keep shaking it, then eventually they're like, okay, and they stop paying attention to it. This is awesome because, right now I have a shirt on, and if I couldn't habituate to that stimulus, my brain would just say shirt, 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 shirt is on you, shirt, 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 and it would be overwhelming, and then I couldn't think of anything else like developmental psychology. But thankfully our brain just tunes that stuff out. It's constant, we don't need to pay attention to it, it's not a threat, it's just there, so you're just like, shirt. And then you just stop thinking about it. Babies will show this response as well. And then joint attention is really, really important for social development. So this is where you and the baby are paying attention to the same thing at the same time. Maybe you're talking about that thing, you're pointing at that thing, but babies learn so much through this. The infant, my baby that I have inside, he'll point at something, and then I'll say, shoes. And he doesn't necessarily say anything back, but it's like, okay, shoes. It almost seems like it registers with him. I just took him out in the snow, and he was like, no, no, no. But it was a different inflection than when he means no. So he understands it's snow, but we get that through that joint attention of me looking at what he's doing and responding. So we almost call this like a serve and return. So he's serving it to me, I return it, then I serve to him, he returns it. And so it's this little dance that parents do, and we don't teach parents to do it, they just seem to know. That's how you interact with babies. So it's pretty cool. So it's our conditioning. Yeah, another thing that could be a whole big class, but this is just on average. Babies will learn through conditioning. We all learn through conditioning. If you've heard of Pavlov's dogs and him teaching dogs to salivate at the sign of a bell or the sound of a bell, this is the same thing here. But this is a neutral stimulus to a baby. This is a nursing cover. But if the mom pairs this over and over with breast milk, so I put on the cover, I breastfeed. I put on the cover, I breastfeed. Eventually, you put on the cover, the baby's going to start drooling. So they learn that this occurs. Operant conditioning, this is one I would study a little bit or maybe look through. But with this, what we're saying is we learn through reinforcement and punishment. And this doesn't have to be, reinforcement like, a huge thing or a huge punishment. Even like a dirty look can be a punishment. A lot of us have that look from our parents that makes us just like shut up immediately. That's a punishment. And then positive is when you add or give something. It's not a value judgment. It doesn't mean like good or bad. So like if you slap somebody in the face, that's a positive punishment. So you're adding something to make them stop doing something. So it doesn't mean good or bad. It just means that you're adding something. If you subtract or take something away, then that's negative. The one that confuses people the most is this negative reinforcement. So with this, you want them to do a behavior, so you're going to take something away. So I want my son to, my older son, my 8-year-old son, I want him to put his dirty laundry in his hamper. So if he does that, then I'll take away a different chore. So I'll say, okay, you really did good this week putting your dirty laundry in the hamper, so this weekend you don't have to do the dishes. I don't think that kid could do the dishes if I paid him. I never taught him to do that. But, it's still the same principle there. So you say, you've done a good job. I want to reinforce that you've done a good job. So I'm going to take away something you don't like. Memory. So we think that babies don't remember stuff. A lot of people just think that, oh, you don't remember anything. But really there is some evidence that they do remember things. So this is a experiment they did. They tied this little rope to a baby in this mobile. Baby would kick in a certain way and the mobile would interact with them in a cool way. So they give babies time to learn this skill. They wait a while, come back like a week later, tie them up to it again, and baby kicks quickly to remember. They show that they remember that skill. They're like, oh yeah, if I did this little kick, I got to see the cool patterns. And they show that again pretty readily. So they seem to remember more of the skills and procedures, but they don't really seem to remember facts and experiences. So a lot of us do experience this infantile amnesia, where if you ask us, like, what did you, what was it like wearing a diaper? You're like, well, I don't remember, I don't know. That's because we forgot. So it's infantile amnesia. A lot of times we don't have that explicit memory to be able to say certain facts and experiences. Another way that we learn, though, is through imitation. So you can see this, there's some research or some theories suggest you can see this from birth. So this is one where the dad is pulling faces and the infant is responding. They don't know they have a face, but we seem to be wired to imitate. We also see this throughout our lifespan. We all learn through imitation. Like I know I've been watching a certain TV show and then I find myself speaking in the same way that a character on that show speaks. So I don't mean to be doing it, but I'm just learning by observing it, picking up her speech patterns. So we see this in babies as well. Language development is a super, super important part of being an infant human. I think I am going to stop the video at this part though, and we will finish language development and social emotional development in the second part. That way we can all take a nice break. I know it's a long video here. It's our longest unit though. Really, it's our longest unit. I checked because I was curious, and this is the longest slideshow. So we will stop here and we'll come back for language development and socio-emotional development.